I present to you Kong, the eighth wonder of the world.
Hey guys, it's BigJackFilms here, and welcome to the King Kong Q&A panel. This is my second time doing some sort of question and answers video. I actually did one a few years ago, and it was a total mess. But this time I'm actually going to be answering a few of your questions about my upcoming remake of King Kong, and see what you guys have to say, and I'll be sure to answer some of your questions for you. So without further ado, let's get started. So the first question comes from Mike, and he asks, does the film resemble the classic style of Kong or that of the 1976 version? Now that's a very interesting question regarding this remake. It's actually kind of a sandwich of like both versions. It's got the classic adventure style of the 1933 film, but it does take place in modern times like the 1976 remake. But in this case, this does take place around the year 2013, which is about the same time as the 80th anniversary of the original Kong, and that's kind of like the timeline where it kind of takes place in. Sam has a question. What types of dinosaurs can we expect from this film? Well, you can expect a lot of great dinosaur scenes from this film. To give a couple examples, there's the Stegosaurus, the Brontosaurus, there's the Parasaurolophus, T-Rex, Pteranodon, all kinds of dinosaurs. We are even including some new dinosaurs like the Carnotaurs, which in the 1996 Kong script were the original predators that were chasing the group in the Brontosaurus stampede, and we included that in this version as well. Mitch has a question. How tall will Kong be in your film? Well, if you guys know, in the original 1933 Kong, Kong was about 18 feet tall, but in the New York scenes he was around 25. In the 1976 remake, he's about 40 feet tall, and in the 2005 Peter Jackson film, he's estimated to be about 25 feet tall. Well, in our version, Kong will be about 50 to 55 feet tall, so he will be a massive creature. I figured with Kong, he has to be extremely big to make the film massive and to make him look like a huge, unstoppable force of nature, this deadly, vicious beast that will attack anybody and, like, kill anybody in his path. So we wanted to make Kong extremely huge, so that's the idea we're going for. Now, we have a couple of questions from Lewis Davis Production, who asked these following questions. The first question is quite interesting. Would you remake King Kong again, just like your fan film, but with a big budget, and if you have a film career in the future? Abso-fucking-lutely, I would love to do a remake, a big budget remake of Kong, if I had the chance when I'm much later on in my career, if I have a career in filmmaking in Hollywood or whatever. In terms of what I would do, I would definitely do an adaptation of the 1996 Kong script. That's a Kong film that I feel should definitely get made in terms of storyline and all the action elements. That's definitely something I would really like to direct in terms of directing a story. The second question asks, what was the most annoying part about making your fan film? That's actually a really good question. I'd say the most difficult aspect of shooting was, this was all kind of brand new for me. At times I didn't know what I was doing, and a lot of it was kind of winged, and there was a lot of preparation beforehand, but I didn't know how difficult it was going to be until we started filming. And then on top of that, getting the actors together and trying to plan days for them to come in so we can shoot certain shots, that was also a bit difficult. The biggest difficulty was finding an actress for Anne. It took us a few years to get that off the ground, and I was so desperate to find an actress that I eventually had to go on Kijiji, which is like the Canadian version of Craigslist, and thankfully somebody came in and did the job. Her name's Silvana Bermstra, and she did a fantastic job playing Anne, so I gotta give a lot of credit for her for that. The third question Lewis asks, what are your plans to do with your remake after it's released on YouTube? That's actually a really good question. The answer to that is I'm going to be doing a tour with it. There's a couple of conventions I do want to screen it at to give it a bit more attention here or there. The main one I want to screen it at is at G-Fest 2017. It's usually around July, the week before Comic-Con. It's in Chicago, Illinois, and I know a few people and they have like a film festival there, and I know a few people who have actually shown their films there, and I think that would be a perfect place to screen the movie is at G-Fest, so hopefully that will come by next year. And the fourth question is, if you do make a sequel to your remake, would it be a remake of Son of Kong or your retelling of Willis O'Brien's unmade film Kong vs. Frankenstein? Or would it be your own original story? In terms of sequels, there is no plans. There's absolutely no plans to film a sequel whatsoever, and that's mostly due to the fact that the cast, they said that they kind of would be on board for it, but I don't want to push them as much as I have in terms of coming in to film the first one. So if we do a sequel, that's totally up to them, and I probably will not do a sequel. If anything, I am kind of planning to write a sequel for fan fiction, but that won't be until way down the line. But in terms of sequels, fan fiction's probably where it's going to stay, hopefully in the future. And Lewis's final question asks, do you got some advice to anyone who wants to make their own Kong movie or other kaiju movies? That's actually a really good question, Lewis. I'd say the one thing I would say in terms of making a film like Kong is you want to be really well prepared for something like this. Like, for me, I only had maybe about from September of 2010 till May of 2011 to kind of prep everything in terms of storyboards, casting, and everything. Something like this, you want to give it maybe like a year or two to prepare everything and to plan out what you're going to do, storyboard it, make the script, props, costume sets. It's something that with Kong we did wing a lot of the time, but I have learned that you have to be well prepared for something like this. So especially for whatever project I do next, I will definitely be more prepped up in terms of shooting and all that kind of stuff and casting. So this was definitely a learning experience. This question comes from Christopher Steve, who asks, will your remake have elements of the scrapped 90s Kong script? You mentioned how it was the Kong film you've always wanted. In answer to that question, Christopher, yes, this is highly based on the 90s Kong script, but I want to make it in a normal setting rather than in the 1930s. The reason for that is because doing a period piece in the 1930s, especially building sets and stuff, is actually quite difficult. But to get a much better sense of filming, we decided to set it in present times. But there are a lot of elements from that 90s Kong script that you will definitely see in this film. Cryptid Films asks, are you serious that this had a budget of $4,000? What'd you spend it on, snacks? First of all, Cryptid Films, that's a very funny question, and second of all, I love your profile picture of the wolf. In terms of why it cost $4,000 is not the fact that we had a budget at the beginning. I usually just count whatever we spend at the very end of the production, and right now we've spent a total of over $4,000, and that's not just on catering and everything. That's like only like 10% of the film in terms of spending. There's also effects, there's building sets from the ground up, there's building pieces like the large Kong hand, there's buying costumes, there's paying for papers, storyboards, and scripts. There's gas money for getting to locations. There's rentals for a few places we had to go to. A lot of that kind of comes together as this big budget that most people would not normally have. And this is very much a home movie, but it's a very expensive home movie. But I think the $4,000 has gone to a very noble cause, and I think it's gonna look terrific. Bonesasaurus asks, hey, that man-eating Parasaurolophus scene is just like the Legend of King Kong from 1975. Did you plan that ahead of time? The swamp scene is so iconic to Kong, and it's something we did want to add in the beginning of the filming process. The problem was that we actually had a couple of years trying to figure out what creature's going to go in this swamp. Even from filming, we had no idea which creature we were going to use. We were originally going to use an Elasmosaurus, kind of like in the Land Unknown. The problem was designing the creature and planning out how we were going to shoot the effects part was extremely difficult in terms of how we were going to do the marine sauropod. We then thought about doing some sort of weird, different creature, kind of like they did in Peter Jackson's Kong, so like kind of a hybrid of certain things and everything. But we eventually decided to go with the Parasaurolophus because we did have one scene originally that had the Parasaurolophus in the beginning, but we cut that out entirely. But then we thought, let's put the Parasaurolophus in as kind of a homage to the Legend of King Kong project that didn't come to fruition. So yeah, that's definitely a huge inspiration in terms of the swamp scene of what we used was the Bo Goldman script from the 1975 Universal King Kong. And finally, the last question comes from Super Crazy Fallful, who asks, what is the running time of your film? That's a really good question, Super Crazy Fallful. By the way, I love your name. It's funny how we filmed this thing. I pretty much used every bit in the script and shot everything that was on paper. And I've come to learn that a script is not, you know, the Bible for making the film. It's a blueprint, and things will change eventually. Things will get cut out, story parts will change, scenes might go in different areas and so on, but I really shot this basically sticking to the script. And I do feel kind of bad that I didn't like have the actors improvise that much, and it was only because I wanted to have it so close to the script. When we eventually filmed everything and cut everything together, this movie was 6 hours long, and I could not believe how long this thing was, and I was literally looking at it like... So, come post-production, around 2014, when I took a year off, I did a huge amount of re-editing, trimming everything, giving it a huge major recut, cutting scenes out. There are a lot of scenes from this movie that are cut out for time, and a lot of scenes that have padded elements we cut out. And that's the thing, I've kind of learned a lot about editing and trying to stick to a certain time frame for your film. When we got to the second cut of the movie, it was about over 3 hours, and still that was even a little too long. So I eventually have cut down the film so far in terms of post-production to maybe about 2 hours and 45 minutes. That's as long as I'm going to try to make the film. There will be, the producers of the film, my parents, will be looking over the film for the premiere, and they want it cut down to a little bit more, but I'll see about negotiating to try to make it as long, like not as long as possible, but I will try to make it where it's a good timing frame where no major scenes are cut out. So yeah, guys, that's it for this Q&A for my remake of King Kong. If you guys have any other questions about the film, let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear from you, and hopefully in a couple of months I might do another Q&A, because I think this was overall really fun to do. But yeah, until the next video, rate, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Until then, this is BigJackFilms, signing off.